The gospel according to patience. The gospel according to patience. Fresh off the heels of expelling demons from a man in Gadara, Jesus crosses over to the other side of the sea where his popularity has immensely grown. People gather around Jesus because there's something about him that pulls people to him and draws people to him. His presence is magnetic. And as he arrives, there is much fanfare because the crowd wants to know what is next. What will Jesus do now? After all, he has calmed a raging sea, healed a man's withered hand, and evicted demons from a guy who lived among the tombs. The crowd knows there is more to Jesus. And I believe that's a good place to quickly park as long as I keep the motor running. If you would allow me to interject my personal gratitude and praise for the fact that there is more to Jesus than just what he has done. Don't get me wrong, he has done marvelous things. He created me, he created you. He caused the children of Israel to cross the Red Sea on dry ground while the waters stood at attention for the processional of God's chosen people. He has performed miracles. He has opened millions of doors. He has been faithful to you. He has been faithful to me. He died for my sins. He died for your sins. But what I like about Jesus is the consistency of his nature. Yes, he has done great and marvelous things, but he is also doing marvelous things. He is healing the sick. He is bringing peace to troubled hearts. He is keeping us with traveling mercies. He is sitting at the right hand of the Father where he ever lives to make intercession for us. I give God the glory that he not only worked in my past, but he is working in my present. He has done. He is doing. But I don't want you to miss the more to Jesus, because not only has he done great things, not only is he doing great things, but I'm grateful that there's so much more to him because of what he will do. He will fulfill his word. He will vindicate the righteous. He will come again. He will defeat Satan. He will be victorious. Can I get a few people who don't mind taking a quick praise break at the beginning of this message to thank God that God is unchanging, that he's continuously consistent, that he's forever faithful, that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. No wonder Paul said, now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think, according to the power. God is still the same yesterday, today, and forever. There is no shadow of turning with thee. I know we're early in the sermon, but I feel something moving in me, because when I think of the goodness of Jesus, not just what he has done, not just what he is doing, but what he will do, I've got to go open my mouth, rear my head back, and thank God that he is gratefully and consistently and faithfully and dutifully and always looking out for me. And I can understand why he was admired and appreciated by both young and old alike, because the crowd wants to be around Jesus. Jesus lived and led with conviction, taught with tenderness, preached with power, and healed with love. And as he arrived at the Jewish towns, he is there met by one of the rulers of the synagogue, a man named Jairus. Let everybody say Jairus. Jairus is a pretty important man. According to research, Jairus was a religious leader who was in charge of taking care of both the spiritual and the physical business of the synagogue. Now, Jairus was a presiding elder of the synagogue, an assembly that included the whole community of Capernaum. His position made him one of the most prominent men of the congregation and of the city. Now, he was not a teacher, he was not a preacher, but was responsible for the order of the synagogue service. He was the keeper of the sacred books, which were the property of the community. He was, in a sense, the president of the congregation, the administrative head of the city, the city manager, so to speak. He could be likened to the head elder, or in some circles, the chairman of the deacon board. Jairus is that guy that everyone had to check with before doing anything in the synagogue. He was an important man, to say the least. And men in Jairus' position were used to being catered to and listened to. Jairus was used to having things done when he wanted and how he wanted. But on this occasion, on this day, Jairus has a different disposition and a different demeanor. For what he stands in need of cannot be accomplished with the help of the other synagogue rulers. He can't get help from his assistants. He can't get help from the choir. The only one that can help Jairus, in the condition that he's in is Jesus. And the Bible tells us that Jairus came and fell at the feet of Jesus. Now, scholars tell us that Jairus had a knowledge of the previous wonderful works of Jesus and had confidence in the power of the Savior. He fell at his feet. He saw beyond the outward poverty of Christ and recognized his greater inner wealth. He fell at Jesus' feet. Recognizing his inferiority and realizing his inadequacy, he fell at Jesus' feet. Because, miracle, there's no higher place on earth than at the feet of Jesus. And coming to Jesus, falling at the feet of Jesus, requires you to believe. Let the church say believe. Now, that's a popular and profound word, because we got to ask our question, what does it mean to believe? Now, might I suggest the following? To believe means to accept something as true, to have a certainty of the truth. And we are living in an age where there is an increasing popularity in the conviction that truth is relative. In other words, whatever you believe to be true, that is what is considered truth. There is this increasing popularity that whatever a certain person or certain group of individuals say, that is truth. Our contemporary context loves to speak in the language of a truth instead of the language of the truth. And in academic circles, it is believed that one of the characteristics of the postmodern age is an attachment to various truths. Typical postmodern thinking rejects ontological truth and meta-narratives. Now, this type of thinking was birthed by Nietzsche, who said, truth is created, not discovered. So that anything that can be considered a credible truth must be qualified and quantified by facts or tangible evidence. And this is the thinking that has found its way into homes and schools everywhere, including the church. And on today, the Lord has sent me on an assignment. I have come to emphasize the truth. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not here to share what I know, but to share and declare what I believe. And the truth is that God is sovereign. God is magnificent. God is excellent. God is a provider. God is a healer. God is our redeemer. God is our savior. God is everything that we need him to be. God is able. And this narrative of Jairus gives to us an example of a man's belief system that lives against skepticism and relativism by not only displaying his belief in word, but displaying his belief in action. Okay? I knew that's how y'all would look at me when I said that. I said it that way on purpose. Because a real belief for the child of God is not just displayed in word. It has to also be displayed in action. Turn to your neighbor and tell him talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. You can't just talk about it. You got to be about it. If you're really going to be a child of God with a cemented conviction that God is your everything, you can't just talk about how good he is. You've got to live like he's good to you. And I have an issue. I hope y'all will just bear with the preacher for a few seconds. I am burdened when I look at people who are never smiling, who say they are Christians after all the Lord has done for you, after all the ways he's made, after all the doors he's opened. I have a problem when I look at people who can never smile when you talk about the goodness of Jesus. Somehow, we thought righteousness had to be a front face and a frown on your face. No, you ought to have a smile on your face and a cheerful disposition about you, because if you really believe who Jesus is, you understand that not only is he the joy and the strength of your life, you recognize that because he loves you abundantly, you have every reason to walk around with a smile on your face, with hope in your heart, with a song on your lips, with pep in your steps, because you know that Jesus is not just your creator, he's not just your sustainer, but like the old Baptist folk used to say, he died. And that ought to be, listen, I don't know what your t-shirts say, but as you walk around the city, you might as well have something on the back of your shirt saying he died. Because if he had not died, you and I would not be here today. If he had not died, you would not look as good as you look. If he had not died, you would not have what you have. I need about 50 of y'all who don't mind being a little bit uncomfortable, who don't mind nudging somebody next to you and tell them, I'm thankful that Jesus died. And where did he die? I'm glad you asked. He died on a hill called Calvary, where he was hung up for our hang-ups, hanging between two thieves. But I'm so glad that it didn't stop at the cross. I'm so glad that didn't stop on resting in the grave. I'm so glad there's a Sunday morning. I'm so glad he's coming back again. I've got hope. I've got conviction. My belief is grounded and steadfast and firm because Jesus. So it's not just word, it's action. Coming to the feet of Jesus, put me back in the monitors, please. Coming to the feet of Jesus requires you to trust that he is able to fulfill the promises that you have heard of. And you've got to be willing to take your burdens to the Lord and leave them there and let God handle the rest, even if it doesn't line up with your expectations or your anticipations. To really understand the full power and the providence of God, you will need to stand on your beliefs, subtracting relative thoughts, scholars' worldview, and follow the Jairus example, being content to just believe. And if you're going to have a conviction, if you're going to have a belief system that can withstand the test of time, first you must be willing to believe beyond the dilemma. I'm in the Bible, I ain't go nowhere. As we look at verse 23, let's back up. We are made aware of Jairus' dilemma, and it is that his daughter is dying. Now, this afternoon, this little girl is a metaphor for anything in your life that needs restoration. This little girl is a metaphor for anything in your life that is gravely ill or in crisis. Jairus says that she lieth to the point of death. Things are bad. This little girl, Jairus' daughter, is very sick. There's nothing the family could do. Intensive care couldn't help. Critical care won't work. One commentator describes this little girl's condition saying that she is at the end of hospice care. The family is in crisis. Now, you got to see that this is tearing the family apart because this is Jairus' little girl. She's 12 years old. Not only is this young daughter Jairus' young daughter, but this is his only daughter. She has yet to begin living the best years of her life, and we can't imagine that her parents had great plans for her future, and even she herself had begun to dream of what her life would be like as she got older. There is no doubt in our minds this afternoon that she was completely and holistically loved by her parents. And this daughter, Jairus' only daughter, like a flower, fades in its budding. Not only is the girl's life in danger and it will leave a physical void, but the dilemma will also leave a void in their relationship. No longer will there be a tight father-daughter relationship. No longer will they be able to dream about the day when Jairus walks his daughter down the aisle. No longer will they be able to talk about the day when she walks across the stage with her diploma. She's in crisis. The family is in crisis. There is a dilemma afoot. And I wonder, is there anybody in Miracle today that has been faced with a dilemma that rocks you from the inside out, where you have to watch something or someone leave you way too soon? Is there a person in here who has had the unfortunate experience of losing a friend because of a misunderstanding? Perhaps you lost the opportunity to get into school because your loan was denied. Or maybe your dream of opening your own business was shattered by an untimely calamity. What in your life, child of God, is gravely ill and in need of restoration? What area of your life is in crisis? What in your life needs healing? And I am encouraged by how Jairus handles this, because this dilemma is serious. And I want you to take note, Miracle, of how Jairus responds to what he's going through. His family is suffering. His daughter is sick to the point of death. And even though it was not popular for a man in his position to go to Jesus for help, that is exactly what he did. He took his dilemma to Jesus. Here is a father pleading and interceding for his child. Now, let's be real. In a case like this, and even most cases in the Bible, it is mostly the mother who pleads for the child. Here is a father begging Jesus for his help. Whereas in our society, men have been given a pass in terms of being emotionally active and spiritually responsible in the home, Jairus shows us a father who is both emotionally attached and spiritually active. He is protector, he is provider and priest. His family is more important to him than popularity or position. Jairus went against the conventional thought of his colleagues because they didn't like Jesus. They were jealous of his popularity. They were threatened by his intellect. But Jairus has a need and he knows where to go. And how many of you in here know that when you have a burden, when you have a dilemma, when you have a perplexity in your life, you want to take it to Jesus? Please don't take it to Oprah. Don't take it to Dr. Phil. Don't take it to Miss Chloe. Don't take it to Steve Harvey. Don't take it to Rachel Ray. Don't take it to Judge Maybelline. Don't take it to Montel. Don't take it to Dr. Phil. Take it to the Lord. As a matter of fact, follow this advice. Take it to the Lord and leave it there. And Jairus begs Jesus to come and lay his hands on the girl so she can be made whole. Y'all let me build my case. Jairus wants Jesus to come and personally see about his little girl. Jairus addressed Jesus in the language of affirmative. When he comes to Jesus, he addresses him in the language of affirmative. Come, lay your hands on her so she can be made whole. Jairus speaks in the tone of restoration and recovery because he believes that there is power in and healing in Jesus' hands. Because if Jesus gets involved in that situation, it can be fixed. Now, some people take their burdens and dilemmas and they internalize them, making themselves sick. But when you drop a problem off at the feet of Jesus and walk away from it, you are saying that you are willing to believe in God's ability despite how bad your dilemma is. And in this day and age where there are more dilemmas than there are days, you cannot handle all of this pressure. Psalm 55:22 says, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. This little girl belonged to God long before she belonged to Jairus. And you and I belong to God long before we belong to our parents. And Miracle City, you belong to God long before you belong to Baltimore. He knew every dilemma that would surface. He knew every trying event and crisis that would land on the front porch of our lives. He knows what needs restoration and recovery. But do you believe in him enough to speak like Jairus? The way Jairus comes to Jesus is the way we should be coming to Jesus, with conviction that whatever is broken, God can fix it. Whatever is fallen, God can lift it. If it's sick, God can heal it. If it's dead, God can raise it. If it's hurting, God can soothe it. If it's bent, God can straighten it out. God can and God will. Is there anyone in here who would declare like Anita Wilson, Jesus will? You got to have a certainty that what you bring to Jesus, he can handle it. Because little faith will bring your soul to heaven, but great faith will bring heaven to your soul. I'm going to say that one more time. Little faith will bring your soul to heaven, but great faith will bring heaven to your soul. And if you're going to navigate life on a regular basis with a conviction that Jesus is everything you claim him to be, you must believe beyond the dilemma, but you must also believe beyond the delay. While Jesus is traveling with Jairus, the crowd gathers, and many who are sick are brought to him. One of my favorite authors says in her book, Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 2, page 319, the disciples were surprised at this ready compliance with the request of the haughty ruler. Although it was only a short distance, their progress was very slow, for the people pressed forward on every side, eager to see the great teacher who had created so much excitement, begging his attention and his aid. The anxious father urged his way through the crowd, fearful of being too late. But Jesus, somebody say, but Jesus. But Jesus, pitying the people and deploring their spiritual and darkness and physical maladies, stopped now and then to minister to their wants. Occasionally, he was nearly carried off his feet by the surging masses. Now, don't miss this. Here's Jairus trying to get help for his daughter, and the crowds are in the way. He doesn't have the luxury of taking shortcuts or having the streets cleared. And while on the way, Jesus takes time out to deal with many different people, in particular, a woman with an issue of blood. Now here, don't miss this. Here is a woman whose name is not even mentioned. She's only mentioned by her condition. Here is a woman whose name is not even mentioned, getting attended to before Jairus. Let me dig out this tension here. Now Jairus asked first, but the woman was helped first. I need somebody to understand that sometimes when it comes to cementing your belief and stretching your faith, part of stretching will involve a delay in your answer. There will be times, child of God, that you will not get immediate satisfaction when you take your burdens to the Lord. You will have to wait for the answer. And now waiting is uncomfortable for most. Many people would prefer to get their help immediately rather than wait. We live in a microwave generation. You want your husband back now. You want your child back now. You want the car now. You want the house now. You want the job now. You want the healing now. But child of God, sometimes you have to wait. And sometimes you're watching people around you get blessed and you're still waiting. Lady said to me some time ago, Pastor, I feel like God has given up on me because he doesn't answer me when I want him to. And that's the sentiment of somebody in here today who's feeling that. So let me encourage you with the same thing I told her. There is a benefit in waiting. For he who waits on God loses no time. Okay, let me give you a Bible because y'all looked at me crazy. Isaiah says, but they that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. In other words, while you are waiting, God is going to replenish your strength. God is going to reload your strength. God is going to restock your strength so that you can endure waiting out the delay. While you are waiting for your kids to get their act together, God is going to renew your strength. For the person that's waiting on the husband or wife to get their mind right, God says, while you are waiting, I'm going to renew your strength. That's why the Bible says, wait on the Lord and be of good courage. And I want to let an impatient parent, a frustrated couple, a distressed person know that the God we serve is never late. It may be weeks, it may be months, it may be years, but let me tell you, don't throw in the towel just yet. Help is on the way. Jesus is on the way. Just because he made a stop along the journey doesn't mean he's not coming. Just because you don't see it now doesn't mean a new chapter isn't coming. Working on my doctorate, and one day I was printing a report, Tabitha, and I noticed that there was a blank page. I initially thought the printer was malfunctioning, and I thought this until I looked near the bottom of the blank page and saw this note, page intentionally left blank. After a sigh of relief, a different section of the report began to spout out from the printer. When that section finished, another blank page followed with the same note, page intentionally left blank. A few seconds later, a new section began to print. As I thought about it, I realized that the blank page that came at the end of each section served two purposes. First, it informed me that the previous section had ended. Y'all making me work way too hard today. Second, it informed me that a new section was about to begin. Sometimes God will seem silent. You will wonder what's going on or where is God. But it's possible that the current page in your life may have been intentionally left blank by God to let you know that a new chapter is on the way. Now, I only know one way to do this, and that's through the Bible. So let me continue the text. Now, I wrestled with some tension here. Jairus asked first. However, Jesus responds to the woman with the issue of blood first. Here, I have to compare and contrast Jesus' delay versus Jairus' development. You see, while Jairus was waiting, we find no mention in the text. He's silent at this moment. And I began to wrestle with God on this thing. God revealed to me that sometimes he allows us to watch others experience Jesus' miracle so that we won't lose faith that he still can perform. Okay. Sometimes, in order to cement your belief, in order to grow your conviction, he has to show you what he can do in the hopeless situations of others, so that you can be encouraged that if he could do it for them, he can do it for you. I want to encourage somebody today that's got a hopeless situation and you're wondering what is God up to. You're watching your neighbors get blessed. You're watching the people at church get healed and delivered, and you're still seen to be stuck in the muck and the mire of your dilemma. I've stopped by to let you know that Jesus' delay is not his denial. It actually might be your development, so that when he does work out the miracle on your behalf, you'll have no choice not to take the credit for yourself, not to take the credit for your position, but to give the credit to where it's due, that when all is said and done and the dust settled, it was Jesus that came through for you. Jairus was given a preview to his own miracle. Okay, I'm gonna move from my notes. Could it be that you've been seeing people around miracle get healed and restored because that's God giving you a preview of what he wants to do in your life? And if you really believe that thing, you'd leap upon your feet, and you might even be tempted to run a lap around the sanctuary, because you know if he's still doing it for your neighbor, there's a possibility and there's the opportunity that he can do the same for you. And if you believe God is still a miracle worker, somebody say yeah. Now, I only got 13 minutes and 30 seconds to make this thing live. And like I told you last time, blessed are the brief, for they shall be invited back. Jesus stopping to help the woman with the issue of blood shows us that he's no respecter of persons. He doesn't cater to the rich and the prominent first, then the poor and the lowly. Doesn't operate according to any sociological order. He deals with everyone just the same. That's the good news for about 50 of you in here today. You can barely afford medical insurance, and certainly if we had to, we could not afford to pay Jesus for all that he does for us. But the great thing about heavenly medical insurance is that it doesn't cost anything and anyone can qualify. You have to wait and have faith that what you have asked for will come to pass. J. Hudson Taylor says, it's not great faith that we need, but faith in a great God. Okay, one more time. It's not great faith that we need, but faith in a great God. A little faith will get God's attention. Don't miss this, because even waiting, even while you are going through the period of delay, there will be moments when bad news comes to you. While they were traveling, a messenger comes and tells Jairus that his daughter has died and he should not trouble Jesus any longer. I love not only what the text says, but what the text does not say. This is not unacceptable eisegesis for you theological scholars out there. This is narrative criticism. The Bible does not tell us that when the messenger comes to Jairus and gives the news that his daughter's died, don't trouble the master anymore, Jairus never leaves Jesus. The text never gives us any indication that Jairus left Jesus. As a matter of fact, the text tells us that Jairus took Jesus with Peter, James, and John, and they went to. Okay. Oh, man. Jairus has been given the worst news of the day. He does not leave Jesus, because he saw Jesus dispense medicine from the hem of his garment. Not that there was power in the hem, but there was power in the one who was wearing the garments that the hem was attached to. Because wherever his presence is, that's where his power is. So the power that went through the hem of the garment and healed the woman with the issue of blood only had power because of whose presence it was attached to. And Jairus understands that if Jesus can dispense healing from the hem of his garment just by standing there, I'll stick with Jesus all the way to my house. And even though something has been pronounced dead, I believe God can restore it. And so if you are going to have a belief that can withstand the test of time, you've got to believe beyond the dilemma. Believe beyond the delay. But finally, you must also believe beyond the death. You might receive news that your child has landed in a bad place strung out on drugs and alcohol. You may lose some things waiting on God. You may lose your house. You may lose your children. You may lose your happiness. You may lose sleep. But if you would do what Jesus said, be not afraid, just believe. Because many of us in the sentences of life put periods where God only intends to put commas. Oh God, I'm trying my best to make this thing live. Just about everyone gave up on Lazarus. Mary and Martha had to do this with their brother. They had to believe that even though Lazarus was dead for 4 days, that Jesus could still handle it. And listen, if Jesus can handle the literal deaths, such as Lazarus and Jairus' daughter, then certainly he can handle the figurative and symbolic deaths in your life. So they get to Jairus' house. When they get to Jairus' house, he takes Peter, James, and John, the girl's mother, Jairus, to go in the room. And when they got to Jairus' house, though, something funny was going on. They had paid mourners who were weeping and wailing at Jairus' house. The news had just reached Jairus, and already there were people who were paid to be convicted that it was over. In those days, they paid people to come and mourn at your house. They would cry, weep, and wail, and keep up a whole bunch of noise. And when Jesus walks in the house, this ain't very deep. It's really not. I mean, you just don't need a PhD or no kind of D-min to figure this out. When Jesus gets there, he puts them out because when you need Jesus to do something for you, it just might mean that the people who keep up noise, who keep up drama, who keep up mess, have to be told to get out. Okay. Is there anybody here that needs Jesus to do something in your life? And there are some people in your life who are always weeping and wailing and causing drama and mess and being negative. The Lord told me to tell them, get out. You ain't got to go home, but you got to get out of here. Stop leaving me discouraging messages on my voicemail. Stop leaving me these ominous text messages. Stop sneaking in my DM box and leaving these messages of gloom and doom. Get out. And listen, and that's why some of y'all are still in the delay you're in right now, because you won't tell people to get out. You keep more mess when the Messiah is trying to clear the way for a miracle to take place in your house. There are some people that have to be told to get out. They need an eviction notice, as it were. They need to know that the door locks have been changed. They need to know that the eviction notice is effective immediately. They need to know that they can no longer come in here and occupy space and mess up what God is trying to do in your life. Jesus tells them, get out. Puts them out. He goes into the room. And at this point, the tension that I still wrestle with is that Jairus is still silent. It's the tension I wrestle with. He's an important man with a lot of position who's always being listened to, but his belief is not about words, it's about action. He is at a place where he no longer trusts the facts. He only trusts because he walked there by faith. Okay, y'all missed that thing. The facts are these. His daughter is dead. The fact is, they hired paid mourners to weep and wail at his house. That's the fact. The fact is, he watched the woman with the issue of blood get her prayer and need taken care of before him. But he never left Jesus. He walked with Jesus to his house because he understood that if he could get Jesus in his house. I'm trying so hard today, y'all. He understands that God can solve any problem. God can solve any burden. God can quench any thirst. God can move any mountain. God can hush any wind. God can heal any hurt. God can dry any tear. God can cure any disease. God can restore and revive anything that is gravely ill and at the point of death. And miracle, I'm about to go to my seat. But I wonder, is there anybody in miracle this afternoon that would believe that God can do anything but fail? Anybody in miracle willing to stretch your faith outside of the box and remember that we walk by faith and not by sight? And I don't know how you feel about it this afternoon, but with the last 2 minutes and 37 seconds, I just want you to know that believe what you want, but I'll believe God. I'm not trusting the facts, but I'm trusting the faith. I wasn't there when the widow's meal and oil was multiplied. And I wasn't there when the Red Sea was divided. And I wasn't there when David slew Goliath. And I wasn't there when Elijah prayed down fire from heaven on Mount Carmel. I wasn't there when Daniel spent a night in the lion's den. And I was not there when Jesus hushed the winds to silence. And I was not there when he put the waves to sleep or when he walked on water. I wasn't there when he turned water into wine. But I believe it happened just like he said. I believe it happened just like he promised. So my trust and my belief and my faith rest in Jesus. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name, on Christ, the solid rock. I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. I may not have been there for a lot of things, but I was there when the Lord forgave my sins. I was there when the Lord saved my soul. I was there when the Lord changed my life. I was there when he picked me up and turned me around. I was there when the Lord answered my prayers. I was there when the Lord met my need. I was there when the Lord answered my call. So put your faith in God and God alone, because faith in God can conquer any circumstance. Faith in God can destroy all doubts. Faith in God can break every chain. Faith in God can endure all trials. I have faith in God because faith marches around the walls of Jericho until faith builds an ark, until faith wrestles with the angel of the Lord, until faith searches for one lost sheep, until faith claims the promises of God, until faith kneels at the foot of the cross, until faith resides on the Isle of Patmos, until faith waits patiently diligently for the Lord until. Is there anybody in here that has a belief in God, that you know he's true, that you know he's sure, that you know he's just? Well, I need you to help me close this sermon and help the person next to you to understand who we're talking about. We're talking about Jesus. Abraham knew him as the sacrifice on Mount Moriah. Moses knew him as a pillar of cloud and fire. Aaron knew him as the rod that budded. Does anybody know who Jesus is? I wish y'all would help me close this sermon. Leap upon your feet, throw your head back, put your hand on your hip, and look at heaven and say, I know who Jesus is. Samuel knew him as the Ark of the Covenant. Elijah knew him as a still small voice. Solomon knew him as the wisdom of Israel. Haggai knew him as the desire of all nations. Malachi knew him as the Son of Righteousness. Some of you know him as a burden bearer and a heavy load sharer. Some of y'all know him as a lawyer in the courtroom and a doctor in the sick room. Some of y'all know him as the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Some of y'all know him as a Rose of Sharon, the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. Now I need about 200 of you who know who Jesus is, who believe he is everything that you need him to be, to throw your hands up in the air and say, I know him. His name is Jesus. Say he justifies, he edifies, as he satisfies, he unifies, as he sanctifies. Jesus, 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 yeah, yeah.